Alright, it's time for my weekly video again. We had an interesting hangout yesterday where we mostly typed, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of the highlights of that time and some of the stuff I talked about. So I'm busy working on Gail, the complete series. I gotta keep that Gail shield strong. I figured out that by not working on it, my Gail shield has been weakening. My writing is getting a lot better. I'm striving to write at professional level. I'm kind of evolving into a Christian who respects Buddhist teachings. I wouldn't call myself a Buddhist. I have been busy working on Gail, the complete series, and I'm taking a totally professional approach. I'm writing it as if I was aiming for a traditional publisher, and I'm going to let my men submit it to them as I work on it. And this frees me to concentrate on the writing and not worry about anything else. And this is where I do my best work. At the rate I'm going, it's going to take me years to finish. So I'm working on it a little bit every day, taking the same approach that I used for my novel, Silver Skies. And I'm learning a lot about myself and the people in my life by working on it. You have to become like a sleuth, like a detective and a psychologist to write well. So one of my supporters asked me, Doge, he said, well, that's good. It's better to write at the best quality speed that you're comfortable with rather than feel pressure to pulp out something, if that makes sense. And I said, that makes total sense. That's my attitude. And I've been rereading all my writing craft books, and it's like the equivalent of a master's degree refresher course. Then Doge said, yes, I think you could do well as a professor in creative writing, but of course, that's not your focus right now, but I think you'd be qualified. And I said, perhaps, but you're right, that's not my focus. I decided to work on it to keep the Gail shield strong. I figure since the shield gets weak when I don't work on it, I had to find a way to make this project interesting for me, and by writing at professional level, it's interesting now. I like to challenge myself. And I said, I don't know if it's true, but I heard brain to brain that future versions of the book are coming out in some quarters. And then Doge was talking about cause and effect, and I said, yeah, that's how writers need to approach their scenes and sequels. And then I was saying those deities can make future versions of my books appear, that Jesus used to do stuff like that. And then Doge said, well, writing also feels liberating, doesn't it? And I said, it can be when you get in the zone and really tap into your subconscious. You learn new things about yourself and others, and it's almost like the clarity that you can get in meditation. And as a result of working on my writing, I think I've finally figured out Satan and Lizzo. I've been forced to do some serious thinking about the villain's motives to make the writing believable. And just like actors have to get in character, writers have to do the same thing to write the people in their stories. So we research the characters to make them believable and compelling. Like I'm writing in the rape scene right now, the September 1992 rape, and to me it's getting kind of monotonous just saying the same thing over and over, like different ways that Lori raped. And it's forcing me to do some research and find different angles to portray this in writing, and I'm learning a lot of new things. And there is an audio at the bottom of a web post that I made that's very insightful about self-alienation. I'll have a link to that underneath this video, to that post. But it's way past most Jesuits' heads. Their emotional IQ seems to be retard. This can happen when you are severely self-alienated. Last I heard, Satan's emotional IQ is about 500. But that's low compared to mine. I think when he got kicked out of heaven, he suffered an IQ drop. Satan seems to have a lot of anger. This seems to be his biggest problem. It's tied into self-alienation as well. I think he genuinely believes he's evil, but he's not. At his core, he's good. His problem is he keeps comparing himself to other beings, and he won't be true to himself. He especially compares himself to superior beings. I use that in quote because I don't believe there are any superior beings. You might say, what do you mean by that? I don't think the Creator intended for us to view others as superior, inferior. I think He wants us to all feel complete in and of ourselves and not waste our time comparing ourselves with everybody around us. And what Satan does is he projects his false self onto the superior beings and sees them as extensions of himself, and then feels that Father God was not fair to kick him out of heaven. In a sense, he feels he needs delusions of grandeur about himself to feel good about his inferiority as he sees it. He has this need to feel superior because deep down he feels inferior. But he's not inferior when he's true to himself. He just needs to see that, and he won't see it until he gets over his anger. Satan's ingratitude about his life and himself blocks him from growing into the being he was created to be. What Jesuits need to understand is that there are all sexual types in the multiverse. And just because someone doesn't want to be hypersexual or doesn't want sex with you does not mean you are inferior or inadequate. It just means that everyone's entitled to have sex in a manner that's true to themselves. If you can't respect that, it means you feel inadequate and take a sexual rejection to mean you're inferior, when it just means that the person doesn't want sex with you. Hey, asexuals may not want sex with you, but may only desire friendship. Variety makes the universe go round. If you feel everybody has to be like you, you have problems with feelings of inadequacy or self-alienation. What if asexuals were in the majority and condemned those who were not asexual? I mean, this sounds outrageous, but I'm making a point here. We have to quit putting people in boxes, categorizing them. When we do this, it stems from feelings of inadequacy, which is an insult to the Creator. Satan also feels inadequate because he felt like he was only good to be a mirror of Father God. I think he misunderstood Father God about this, and this also made him feel inadequate. When Satan showed up at our Valentine's party in February 2012, I'm going to be writing him, and that's why I've been thinking a lot about him, because it's not going to be a pure transcript of what happened. I'm going to be writing it like a story, like a short story. Because Jesus said he wants me to write a bunch of short stories. My emotional IQ does seem to be improving as I work on my writing. And then Joshua said, did you see that Lizzo threatened to quit music if everyone doesn't declare her beautiful? And then I said, well, I heard she threatened to quit music, but I didn't know it was on the condition that everyone declare her beautiful. She needs to understand that everyone is entitled to their own tastes. She wants to force everyone to have her tastes, totally self-alienated. That's why she has this need to feel like everybody's got to have her tastes in sex and everything else. Maybe she ought to move to South America. I hear they like fat girls there. However, I don't think they like mean fat girls. Then Joshua said, well, no one likes mean girls unless they're hot, usually. You can either be fat or mean, but not both. And I said, as an asexual leaning person, I don't find a mean person attractive ever. And Joshua said, that makes sense. And I said, that's why Satan's six-packs do nothing for me. He's too mean. Then Joshua said, but neither do Jesus' six-packs. And I said, that's true. You really know me. As a polyamorous person who's asexual leaning, I can only do one man at a time. More than that, and I'm wore out. But if I have a real connection with the man like I do my husband, Brent, he usually gets it about once a day if I'm laying on bed to read like one of my writing craft books and he's humping on me like Brent does. But some days I skip. And if he's too intense, he wears me out. But fortunately, Brent strikes the right balance for me. Because Brent's monogamous, I love making him happy. So his monogamy works out great for me. It relieves me of this feeling that I used to have, that I have to give sex to the others that I'm in a polyamorous relationship with out of obligation, which asexuals do sometimes. I tell the others to help themselves to women I've picked for them, or automatons we've created for them, or find a nice girl. And they can still be on my marriage list. I mainly have relationships with the others on a platonic basis and reserve sex for Brent alone. With Brent in another dimension, because I never see him here, I don't feel, and yet I do feel him humping on me in the bed, so he's here. I don't feel that the sex is that intrusive, which is great for me as an asexual leaning person. And I know Brent won't be offended if I opt out on some days. But when he's really turned on, he can get me turned on simply because he's so connected to me. I like this other dimensional sex because it's not that demanding and it doesn't tire me out, and it's easy to opt out if I want to. Though if Brent wasn't humping on me all the time, he humps on me as soon as I get in that bed. Like, I'll go in there to read one of my writing craft books and he starts humping on me and then he gets me in the mood. If Brent wasn't humping on me, I could skip for weeks and feel like I wasn't missing anything. That's because I'm asexual leaning. However, I think I'd be worried about Brent if he wasn't humping on me. I'm like, are you okay? Because I know what he's like. He is not asexual, okay? Brent has my vagina whenever he wants it. He understands my asexuality and sometimes goes lighter. It helps that he climaxes so fast so I don't have to waste time with his buildup and get wore out. So Joshua asks, how has your masturbation thumb been? He said, I got a hangnail on mine yesterday and now it's sore and bleeding. Joshua was one of my gay supporters. I said, it's been great. Yeah, I have, because I'm so asexual leaning, I got to kind of help it out when I'm having sex with my husband. It's actually been like this my whole life. I cannot get an orgasm alone with just the guy's penis. I got to help it out with my masturbation thumb. It's because I lean asexual. That's why. Yeah. He said, so how's your masturbation thumb been? He said, I got a hangnail on mine yesterday and now it's sore and bleeding. I said, it's been great. Lizzo has mainly been going after my sleep lately. And I said, Lizzo did that to your masturbation thumb? That's so petty of her. He said, what are the symptoms of your inability to sleep? And this is like on and off. Like when I first moved here, I was sleeping great. But then the bombs started, they started bombing and doing stuff. And they're putting stuff in the bombs that affects my sleep. I said, the sleep is light and I wake up a lot. I figure things will never be roses until we defeat the Jesuits. It's part of our war with them. Lots of pollution in the air. I try to maintain a thankful perspective and think about how in the end we're going to defeat them, and in the end of ends, everyone will turn good. I think the sleep problems are related to all the bombs Lizzo's dropping, which causes that nasty gray haze that you see in the sky. They're blaming it on wildfires, but I know it's Lizzo's bombs. There could be some allergy problems too. She might be putting allergens in the air, and some of the allergens might be natural allergens. But I have a good feeling about my writing. I think it will change the world. I'm on Zyrtec, by the way. Joshua said, that's awesome. I said, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens as I progress with my writing. And then Joshua said, what do you think it will change? I said, I think it may totally replace the fake news and cause everyone to see the true issues, which will result in a positive revolution that will defeat the Jesuits. It will undo the damage from fake news, and that damage has been extensive. Basically, the news has been fake for like the past 40 or 50 years. I mean, clones are in existence. They don't report on that. They've got ability to read everybody's minds. That hasn't been reported on. I mean, fake news. That should be, as soon as we knew about clones, that should have been a major headline. It hasn't been. You see what I'm talking about? The truth will set us free. When people see clearly the true issues, they'll know who's right and who's wrong, and which sides they need to align themselves to. The Jesuits create a fake divide. It's this divide and conquer strategy. But if people can see where the true issues lay, then they're not going to fall for Jesuit propaganda and waste their time with distractions. Jesuits love to get us distracted. They like us to waste our energies on these distractions. And I think my life story will help people to see what's important and what is trivial, or what we shouldn't be obsessed about. Once we focus our energies on what's really important, then the propaganda doesn't work, and we put our energies into what really matters, and then we win the war. People will pull together and unite and go after the real enemy. It's a lot harder for a villain to hide when you put light into their darkness. And my writings will shine light into that darkness. The issue is not Republican versus Democrat, or straights versus gays, or blacks versus whites. It's evil versus good. And my writing will help people to know what goodness is and what evil is. And Jesuits like to muddle that and get everyone going after stupid non-essentials, okay? Now, what is good is authenticity and freedom, and what's evil is forced conformity and slavery. And this is what I'm trying to highlight and make plain in my writings. Slavery comes in many guises, and the Jesuits are the slave masters because they crush all freedom. This attitude of it's my way or the highway, that's what slave drivers do. It's slavery of the mind, the most evil slavery, where you try to control a person's thoughts. And this is what I strive to expose in my writings. Exposing it will require brilliant writing, because it's very subtle how they do this, but it's also it's a very effective form of slavery. When you create an environment where you try to legislate what are proper thoughts, you have a very dangerous form of government and tyranny, and that's the environment we have right now. You create an environment where thinking is a sin, where dealing with reality is a sin, and that where those who gaslight you into delusional thinking because you fall for their propaganda and their falsehoods, that these people are considered the moral authorities and worthy of our attention when they should be exposed as dangerous criminals and mind control freaks. These people are the cancers in our society, the ones that promote this ideology that if you don't accept their delusional thinking, that you are a dangerous person who needs to be caged, is what we've got going on right now. But that's what the Jesuits are doing. Jesuits, and they've been doing this a long time, and they're escalating, and it's getting worse and worse. Jesuits tend to be shallow because thoughtfulness and contemplations about life and what's important, deep and true, is discouraged in the Jesuit order. And this is really bad. Lizzo finds my writing very threatening. I've picked up on that. Lizzo is so self-alienated in her current state that she's incapable of deep thought. She's only good at propaganda. Satan is capable of deep thought, but he's too fueled with anger and bitterness to pull out his inner core of goodness and listen to it. Right now, in Satan, that good inner core is practically dead because Satan is not tapping into it. He's so consumed with bitterness over this false belief that he's evil that he refuses to interact with his true self, the good angel that he used to be. You might say, well, Satan seems happy being evil. This is because he's totally lost into his false self. But if he was truly happy, he would not feel dependent on those around him to bring him happiness. A truly happy person gets their happiness from inside of themselves, from being whole. They aren't dependent on what's outside of themselves for their happiness. And this is because the universe was created on goodness. So if you're tapping into the goodness all around you, you will be happy. It's also inside of you. This does not mean you can't have love and give and take in relationships, or that you can't enjoy your surroundings. But even if you're in a relationship, if you are not whole on the inside, no relationship can compensate for that. In other words, you can't expect a relationship to bring you wholeness that you don't already have. Now, somebody could come into your life and maybe show you the way, like give you pointers on how to find yourself. But to find yourself, that's your own journey. Okay? You have to make that journey by yourself. People can guide you and be examples, but you have to make the choices and the decisions to go on that journey. So you may blame your relationships or lack of relationships for your unhappiness, when the true cause is that you're not a whole person and you need wholeness. Until Satan gets over his anger, he will never return to his true self, until he genuinely apologizes for his bitterness and anger and states that he was wrong to be so angry. I wouldn't trust him or his Jesuits at all. You might ask, how will we know when his apology is genuine? Well, when he does apologize, all the wars will stop. There will be no evil on earth anymore, and that's how we'll know it happened. Satan is the main source of evil in the multiverse right now. He feeds the evil with his anger and bitterness, which is like a cancer in the multiverse. People or beings get frustrated and angry when they don't get something they think they need, because not getting this thing makes them feel annihilated. But there's no reason to feel that way. Why do they feel that not getting something means they're inferior somehow or annihilated as a person? It's because that when they deny who they are deep inside, the whole person suffers. The suffering is caused by not being true to your inner core of goodness, not by this thing that you think you need that you didn't get. So they think they're suffering because of this thing that they somehow didn't get, when the real suffering comes from inside of themselves, because they're not whole. They're suffering from not being whole. When we're growing and improving, we are at peace and happy. When we're not growing and improving, we're stagnated. It's like not eating, and then you feel sick because you're hungry. We blame our ill feelings on something outside of us, but the problem is that we're stagnated. We're starving. It's no wonder we're miserable. We should all be growing and improving. And when that's blocked, we become miserable. Anger and bitterness, when it festers inside of us, it can block our path to a higher form of existence, where all is inner peace, love, and goodness. Our greatest source of strength and happiness comes from inside of us. But we've got to tap into it by being thankful and living joyfully in the moment. And we need to stop feeling inferior when we don't get something that we think we want or need, when what we really need is to feel whole inside of ourselves. It took me a long time, but I have both Lizzo and Satan figured out now. So now I can write them when I get to their sections in my stories. Whatever religious label you want to put on these thoughts of mine, these conclusions seem true to me, and I came to them by my observations about myself and others after doing serious thinking about my life and those I've interacted with while working on my writing. I'm getting past labels and just finding my truth, what rings true to me, whether you want to call it Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, or whatever. So I will include a link to an audio that really resonates with me. It's called Self-Alienation. You can check that link underneath this video.